Former Air Force Staff Sergeant Rebecca Martinez was driving alone through rural Montana on her way to visit her father's grave for the first time since his funeral, 6 months earlier, when her car hit black ice on a mountain highway and careened off the road into a deep ravine, where the vehicle rolled twice before coming to rest upside down against a tree that prevented it from sliding further down the steep embankment. Becca had sustained a concussion and possible internal injuries that left her drifting in and out of consciousness, while her cell phone lay shattered on the passenger floor, and the remote highway saw fewer than a dozen vehicles per day during winter months, when most travelers avoided the dangerous mountain passes. The crash occurred during a blizzard that reduced visibility to near zero and made rescue operations extremely challenging for emergency services who had no way of knowing that a veteran was trapped in a wrecked vehicle over 200 feet below the highway, where normal search patterns wouldn't detect her location. But Luna, Becca's 3-year-old golden retriever, who served as her emotional support dog for combat-related anxiety and depression, had survived the crash uninjured and immediately understood that her veteran needed help that only human rescuers could provide in this remote wilderness emergency. For 18 hours through a winter storm that threatened to bury both woman and dog in snow, Luna climbed repeatedly up the steep ravine to the highway, where she positioned herself in the roadway and used every attention-getting behavior in her repertoire to flag down the few vehicles that passed by in conditions that most drivers considered too dangerous for travel. Welcome to Saved by Tales. Before we dive into this gripping story of loyalty meeting isolation and an emotional support dog's determination to become a beacon of hope when mechanical failure and weather conditions combined to create a survival situation that tested both human endurance and canine devotion. Join our community of animal hero enthusiasts who understand that some rescues require 4-legged advocates whose persistence can bridge the gap between disaster and discovery when conventional safety systems fail in the places where help seems impossibly far away. Staff Sergeant Rebecca Martinez had served 2 tours as an aircraft maintenance specialist in Iraq, before returning home to Montana with invisible wounds that manifested as anxiety attacks and depression, triggered by loud noises and the loss of military structure that had defined her adult life. Becca struggled with the transition from military to civilian life. Her mother, Carmen Martinez, often observed during family visits. She had nightmares, couldn't handle crowds, and felt like she didn't belong anywhere except in uniform. Luna, a specially selected golden retriever, had been trained as an emotional support animal, whose calm temperament and intuitive responses could provide anxiety relief and companionship for veterans dealing with combat-related psychological injuries. Luna isn't a service dog with specific task training, explained VA counselor Dr. Sarah Walsh, but her emotional support capabilities have been crucial for Becca's mental health stability and her ability to function in civilian environments. Becca's decision to drive to her father's gravesite represented significant progress in her grief processing and her willingness to face emotional challenges that had seemed overwhelming since his sudden death from a heart attack. Becca's father, retired Army Sergeant Major Miguel Martinez, had been her hero and primary source of strength during her own military service, making his unexpected death particularly devastating for someone already struggling with combat-related psychological injuries. "Dad understood what I went through overseas," Becca had told Dr. Walsh during therapy sessions. "He was the only person who really got why I couldn't just get over my military experiences and adjust to civilian life." The drive to Miguel's gravesite in the remote mountain cemetery, where he had requested burial, represented Becca's first major solo journey since his funeral, an important step in her healing process. Luna's presence provided emotional support during the difficult drive, offering the kind of companionship that helped Becca manage anxiety about traveling alone through isolated areas that reminded her of dangerous convoy routes in Iraq. "Luna keeps me grounded when my anxiety gets bad," Becca often explained to other veterans. "She doesn't judge me for having bad days, and her presence helps me remember that I'm safe now." The mountain highway that Becca chose for her journey to the cemetery was known for dangerous winter conditions, but it provided the most direct route and avoided the heavily populated areas that triggered her anxiety in crowded civilian environments. "I knew the road was risky," Becca would later tell investigators, "but I needed to get to Dad's grave before his birthday, and the main highways have too much traffic for me to handle comfortably." The black ice that caused Becca's accident was virtually invisible on the dark asphalt, created by a combination of melting snow and freezing temperatures that made the highway treacherous even for experienced mountain drivers. Luna's position in the back seat provided some protection during the initial impact, but the rolling crash threw both occupants around the vehicle interior as it tumbled down the steep embankment. The final resting position of the overturned car against a large pine tree probably saved both Becca and Luna from more serious injuries by preventing the vehicle from continuing its descent down the ravine. Becca's injuries from the accident included a concussion that caused periodic loss of consciousness and possible internal injuries that made movement painful and potentially dangerous without proper medical evaluation. "I kept fading in and out," Becca recalled during her hospital recovery. "I could hear Luna whimpering nearby, but I couldn't focus clearly or figure out how to get help." Luna's condition after the crash was remarkably good despite the violent tumbling, with only minor cuts and bruises that didn't prevent her from moving freely around the wrecked vehicle. The Golden Retriever's immediate assessment of the situation included checking on Becca's condition and recognizing that her veteran was seriously injured and needed medical assistance that Luna couldn't provide. The remote location of the crash meant that normal emergency detection systems like automatic crash notification weren't available, and the destroyed cell phone eliminated conventional means of calling for help. Luna's instinctive understanding that Becca needed human help led to her decision to leave the crash site and attempt to reach the highway where she might encounter potential rescuers. The climb from the ravine to the highway was treacherous for a dog, requiring navigation through steep terrain, fallen trees, and snow-covered rocks that created multiple opportunities for injury or falls. The embankment was nearly vertical in some places, Highway Patrol investigator Dr. Robert Kim would later observe. For a domestic dog to make that climb repeatedly shows remarkable determination and intelligence. Luna's first trip to the highway took over an hour as she carefully navigated the dangerous terrain, while presumably understanding that falling or becoming injured would eliminate Becca's only chance for rescue. The Golden Retriever's arrival at the deserted highway presented a new challenge: how to attract attention from the few vehicles that might pass during the ongoing blizzard conditions. Luna's approach to flagging down vehicles demonstrated sophisticated problem-solving as she positioned herself in the roadway where approaching headlights would illuminate her presence despite the limited visibility conditions. The Golden Retriever's attention-getting behaviors included barking, running toward approaching vehicles, and positioning herself in a way that forced drivers to notice her presence rather than simply driving around her. "Dogs don't normally behave the way Luna was acting," observed truck driver Mike Rodriguez, who was one of several drivers who encountered Luna on the highway. "She was clearly trying to communicate something urgent." Luna's persistence was remarkable as she continued her signaling behaviors despite multiple vehicles passing without stopping, understanding somehow that each passing car represented a missed opportunity for Becca's rescue. The weather conditions made stopping dangerous for most drivers, but Luna's behavior was so unusual that several motorists called Highway Patrol to report a dog acting strangely on the dangerous mountain road. Luna's rescue strategy required her to make multiple trips between the highway and the crash site, checking on Becca's condition before returning to continue her signaling efforts for potential rescuers. Each round trip took significant time and energy as Luna navigated the treacherous terrain while ensuring that her veteran remained stable during the extended emergency period. "I remember Luna coming back to check on me between her trips to the road," Becca recalled. "She would lick my face and whine softly, then disappear again up the embankment." The Golden Retriever's endurance was tested by the repeated climbs in challenging weather conditions, but her determination never wavered despite the physical demands of her rescue efforts. Luna's ability to find Becca in the overturned vehicle after each highway trip demonstrated remarkable spatial memory and navigation skills during emergency conditions that challenged even her considerable abilities. After 18 hours of persistent signaling, Luna finally encountered a driver who was willing to stop and investigate her unusual behavior despite the dangerous road conditions and ongoing storm. Forest Service Ranger Jennifer Walsh was driving to respond to another weather-related emergency when she encountered Luna on the highway and immediately recognized that the dog's behavior indicated a serious problem. "Luna was different from the other reports I'd heard," Walsh explained later. "She wasn't just wandering or lost. She was clearly trying to lead me somewhere specific." The Golden Retriever's reaction to Walsh stopping was immediate and purposeful, demonstrating behavior that clearly indicated she wanted the ranger to follow her away from the highway. Walsh's decision to follow Luna despite the dangerous conditions and uncertainty about what she might find represented the breakthrough that Luna had been working to achieve for nearly a day. Luna's guidance led Walsh to the edge of the ravine where the overturned vehicle was barely visible through the snow and darkness, demonstrating the effectiveness of the Golden Retriever's rescue strategy. "I never would have found that car without Luna," Walsh admitted during the investigation. "It was completely invisible from the highway, and we had no idea anyone had crashed in that location." The rescue operation required specialized equipment and additional personnel to safely reach Becca in the overturned vehicle where she had been trapped for 18 hours with declining medical condition. Luna's presence throughout the rescue operation provided emotional support for Becca as emergency responders worked to extract her from the damaged vehicle and provide medical treatment. "Luna stayed right beside me during the whole rescue," Becca observed gratefully. "She had done her job by getting help, but she wasn't going to leave me until she knew I was really safe." Becca's extraction from the overturned vehicle revealed the severity of her injuries, including concussion, hypothermia, and internal injuries that required immediate helicopter evacuation to a trauma center. "Becca's condition was critical when we found her," reported flight paramedic Dr. Lisa Chen. "Another few hours of exposure in those conditions could have been fatal." Luna's condition was evaluated by emergency veterinarians who found that despite her 18 hours of rescue efforts in harsh conditions, she had sustained only minor injuries and showed no signs of serious medical problems. The Golden Retriever was allowed to accompany Becca during the helicopter evacuation, providing continued emotional support during the medical emergency that her persistent rescue efforts had made possible. Luna's presence clearly had a calming effect on Becca during transport, Dr. Chen noted. Their bond was obviously crucial for Becca's psychological stability during the medical crisis. Becca's recovery from her crash injuries was complicated by her existing PTSD symptoms, but Luna's continued presence provided stability and emotional support throughout the hospitalization and rehabilitation process. "Having Luna with me made all the difference during recovery," Becca reflected. "She had already saved my life once, and her presence helped me feel safe during the medical treatment." The crash experience initially worsened some of Becca's anxiety symptoms due to the trauma of the accident, but Luna's heroic rescue efforts also provided positive associations that helped counteract some of the negative psychological effects. Luna's rescue showed Becca that she wasn't alone, and that help would come when she needed it, observed Dr. Walsh during follow-up therapy sessions. That realization was important for her overall mental health recovery. The bond between Becca and Luna was strengthened by their shared survival experience, creating deeper trust and reliance that enhanced Luna's effectiveness as an emotional support animal. Luna's rescue efforts attracted widespread attention from local media and veteran organizations who recognized her persistence and intelligence as extraordinary examples of animal heroism and loyalty. Luna's 18-hour rescue effort represents remarkable dedication and problem-solving ability, noted animal behavior specialist Dr. Amanda Foster. Her systematic approach to getting help saved Becca's life when conventional rescue methods weren't available. The story was featured in emotional support animal programs and veteran support organizations that highlighted the life-saving potential of properly matched animals and veterans dealing with combat-related injuries. Luna proves that emotional support animals can provide more than just companionship, explained veteran advocate Dr. Robert Martinez. Her rescue capabilities went far beyond her normal training and showed genuine heroism. Becca and Luna's crash experience led to enhanced emergency preparedness training that included GPS tracking devices and emergency communication equipment for veterans traveling in remote areas. Luna's rescue showed us the importance of backup communication systems for veterans who prefer isolated areas for travel, noted Emergency Management Coordinator Dr. Sarah Kim. The case also contributed to improved training protocols for emotional support animals that included basic emergency response behaviors that could enhance their effectiveness during crisis situations. "We learned from Luna's natural rescue instincts," observed animal trainer Dr. Jennifer Martinez. "Her behavior patterns have been incorporated into enhanced training programs for emotional support animals." 2 years after Luna's highway rescue, Becca continued her recovery with enhanced confidence in both her emotional support animal and her own resilience during challenging situations. "Luna didn't just save my life that day," Becca would tell audiences during speaking engagements about veteran mental health. She showed me that I was worth saving and that I had a partner who would never give up on me. The Golden Retriever's role in Becca's life expanded beyond emotional support to include enhanced confidence for travel and outdoor activities that had been limited by anxiety since her military service. Their story continued to inspire improved support systems for veterans dealing with combat-related psychological injuries and recognition of the remarkable capabilities of emotional support animals whose devotion could transcend normal training boundaries. Years later, Becca and Luna continued their partnership while Becca worked to help other female veterans access emotional support animal programs and develop coping strategies for combat-related anxiety and depression. Luna taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, Becca reflected during interviews about her recovery journey. She spent 18 hours asking for help on my behalf, and that persistence saved both our lives. Their story demonstrated that some partnerships create safety nets that extend beyond normal expectations, proving that emotional support animals could provide literal lifelines when mechanical failures and environmental hazards threatened veterans whose service-connected disability made them more vulnerable during emergencies. Luna had proven that heroism doesn't require formal training or official designation. Sometimes the most important rescues come from companions whose love and loyalty inspire them to attempt impossible things when the people they protect need miracles to survive. I still think about that Montana blizzard when a female veteran lay trapped and unconscious in an overturned car at the bottom of a ravine where no searcher would think to look, while her shattered cell phone rendered her invisible to emergency services and winter conditions threatened to bury both woman and vehicle in snow that would hide them until spring thaw revealed their fate. If Luna had been just a companion instead of a determined advocate, if she'd lacked the intelligence to understand that highway meant humans and humans meant help, if she'd been anything less than a hero who would climb treacherous embankments 18 times through a blizzard because her veteran needed saving, Rebecca Martinez would have died alone in that ravine, while her family wondered why she never arrived at her father's grave and never came home. Luna's story teaches us something profound about the bonds that develop between veterans and their emotional support animals, proving that some partnerships create safety systems that go far beyond trained responses to become acts of pure devotion. When survival depends on someone who refuses to give up hope that help will come, if you just keep asking long enough and loud enough.